hello, and welcome to the B2B Comms Breakdown. We are back. We had a bit of a break over the summer, and we are back and ready and raring to go. I'm Stacey Meadwell. I'm a former property journalist turned content creator, content strategist, media trainer, and moderator, working with businesses in the built environment sector.
And I'm Abbas. I am a marketer by trade. I guess I cut my teeth with like engineers quite a lot. And then, so now I work for myself and I do marketing consultancy. And also I create a shed load of content, and I'm into podcasting and do lives like this and train people.
Do lots of things. But did you have a break over the summer? Did you have a good break?
I did. I went to France, including to a family co-working retreat, which is a whole new concept. I did that, and then a rather lovely villa by a pool. That was all very, very nice. And yours?
I worked through the summer. I didn't have a break at all. I had a couple of days up in Scotland, but no, I didn't take a break. Anyway, if you are watching live, please do say hello in the comments. We can see those, and it would be good to know that people are actually watching us live. Just say hello where you are at the moment, or anything else that pops into your head. It would be great to know that we are. How was your summer? Yes, that's a good one. Tell us how your summer was. It'd just be good to know that people are actually watching and we're not just talking to ourselves. Anyway, we are kicking off our autumn series of B2B Comms breakdowns with a look at 4 different content channels: paid, earned, shared, and owned media, or PESO, potato. I'm not sure how you say it, whatever it's known as. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about what those are specifically in a moment. But the landscape is changing, and there's a lot to keep up with. So how can these channels be used effectively? And how can you use them to get your brand in front of a bigger or more targeted audience?
Okay, so for the next 20 minutes, we are going to discuss very much about have magazines had their day, which is the earned media. What other avenues are open for getting more traction for your content, which is the shared and paid media? And also, are you using your own channels effectively? So the stuff that you own. As always, we want to hear from you, because it's not just us blabbering on, even though we do talk a lot. So if you can pop your questions in the comments, your ideas, thoughts, if we should keep quiet, and we will respond towards the end in our own way.
Great. We have people watching. Hello, say hello. Hello, Ben. Hello, Kate. Hello, Shirin. Hello, Sean. Fantastic to have you watching along, and thank you for commenting. Before we launch into the questions, Io, do you just want to do a quick run through of PESO and what that actually is? PESO.
All right, I'm going to add it to the screen. I think it's the PESO. I'm going with the PESO model. I don't know.
Okay, let's call it PESO.
PESO is fine, right? So it is this beautiful model, which is about, I guess it's the intersection of paid media, owned media, shared media, and earned media. And there's always these weird overlaps, because in kind of comms nowadays, nothing is clear cut. So paid media is basically, if you're going to do kind of ads, boost content, all that kind of stuff you pay for to get coverage and traction. Earned media, basically, it's more or less around media relations. So it could be your trade press, your industry press. But you've also got kind of newer entrants like Substack and stuff like that, which also could be paid media, right? Then you've got kind of shared media, which I guess is like social media. So, your LinkedIn's, your Instagrams, your Discords, and also Slack and those kind of more community kind of things where people talk about you. And then you've got owned, which is stuff you own, which is your website, your blog, all that kind of stuff. Those channels that are yours, you can control and you can send stuff out. That's kind of the model. And we're going to talk around that because the mix of that is changing and as to what's effective now. So on to our first question, Stacey. So have magazines had their day? As a former journalist, I want to hear your thoughts.
It's true. Well, Well, I mean, as you mentioned on LinkedIn this morning, what's happened with the Evening Standard, ad revenue has fallen through the floor for a lot of publications. They've all got slimmer or disappeared. Obviously, there's still an online presence for those that don't have a physical presence. So, there is that question of, are they worth trying to get into? I would say, I think there is still great value in having that third-party endorsement from these publications. It can help in building trust if your quote or your comment piece is in one of these publications. And I think actually, because a lot of publications are so under-resourced at the moment, there's an opportunity. If you are producing good quotes, good comments, pitching in really good, pithy, punchy comment op-eds, those sorts of things, I think there's a real opportunity there, because, if they're under-resourced, they need content, and they're looking for good content. So if you can produce that, I think quality is the key here. It's got to be good stuff. And with those sort of things, you do need to put your head above the parapet a little bit, particularly with opinion pieces. But there are huge benefits for that. I'm not going to, I've got far more to say, but I'm going to hand over to you, Io, because you may have different views on whether magazines are over.
Do you know what? It's like writing, because it's quite funny, because I always prep last minute, as Stacey knows. I was writing this morning, and I kind of sat there and I was like, have magazines had their day? And I'm like, yes and no. It kind of feels like one of those kind of weird things, because I guess for me, I started off in construction PR like 20 years ago. That's my first job. So I used to have to sell in to all these magazines. And when I look back and you think of like the main industry publications from when I started out in 2001, they were a lot chunkier. They were proper thick things with advertisers, all of that kind of stuff. And now when you look at the print editions, they're just, they are literally flimsy, right? There's hardly anything. So that's a big change in itself. So you've got all of that. And then, they were full of ads, they were making money. And now I guess they're still trying to hold on to those models, but in a modern context. So it's making it harder because they're online. And it's like, actually, some of your models don't work anymore. Paying for a whole year's subscription to EG or whatever, or any magazine, Property Week or whatever. Or like you sit there and go, actually, I could just pay for the articles I wanted, or, like all that kind of stuff, which they haven't kind of necessarily embraced or thought about. So anyway, there's that's one part. But then I also think there's like newer media like Substack, where you can kind of, pay for a year, 150 quid and get the content you want from particular writers that you really want. And there are some people who are amazing writers and you're happy to pay for that. So I do think there is still a market for quality writing, magazines, but the format of how we get content is different. So I do think there is that. But then I'm sort of slightly torn, because I'm like, okay, there's that side, but then you've also got the stuff like independent journalism, and we need it. You look at Grenfell and the stuff that Peter Apps was writing about that, from the trial and all the way through. Such important journalism that we do need. So we kind of need them as well. So it's that weird, I don't know. That's why I'm torn, is that have they had their day? Yes and no.
Well, I would agree with that to a certain point. But I would throw in that there are other earned media avenues to explore. So a lot of these publications now are doing podcasts. So that's an avenue to explore, pitching in and getting onto one of their podcasts. There's so many podcasts out there. We're both huge podcast fans. There's also events, a lot of these events are a money spinner. They have been for a long time.
They don't make money on the magazines anymore. They don't make money on the magazines.
Events, panels, all of those sorts of things, conferences. Again, if you can get onto those panels, it's third-party endorsement. You're there for a reason. So I would add that it's moved beyond magazines. Now there are so many other avenues that they are multimedia outlets now. They're not just about a magazine or or a website anymore. We've got some, I just wanted to, because I think we're going to move on to, unless you've got something else to say, but I just wanted to do a couple of comments here. Ben has said, the state of journalism magazine publishing is heartbreaking. I say this as a former journalist myself, don't know how it's going to revive and what form. It saddens me so much. Yeah, I agree. I think, particularly when you see the stats about, younger people in particular, not, getting their news and that source of information from social media. I think there is a transition, and there is, it is a huge changing landscape, and I'm not sure how we navigate, or how journalism industry navigates that. I think there will always be a flight to quality. I mean, I think it's interesting that I can't remember the name of the company that's looking to potentially buy the Observer, and their raison d'etre is slow journalism. So those deep, in-depth Tortoise Media, that's the one. Yeah. So I think, so I think there is still life in it. Yet. And Caroline has said, real journalism is about facts. It seems everywhere is a question of rushing to print, specifically on social, at the expense of facts. Yeah, there is an element of that. Yes, and I think partly the problem is that the teams have been cut. So there's not those checks. When I look back at, how much, thanks, Sharon Tortoise, she just mentioned Tortoise, the name just disappeared. There's, I forgot what I was going to say now. What was I going to say? Anyway.
You're just basically saying, as a journalist, how you had bigger teams. I think you were going to say,
bigger teams, and people. The stuff that we wrote would go through probably 5 different people before it got published. Mistakes would still very occasionally sneak in, but there were a lot of people checking stuff, and I just don't think they have those resources anymore because teams have been cut to the bone. So, and it is that rush, particularly with online. You've got to get stuff out. You can't wait.
It's different medium, isn't it? But I mean, it's interesting though as well, because I think Caroline's point about social media is, a lot of the social media just seems to be hype, and it's like, how do we get it into a short, pithy thing? And it's like, actually, this is a big issue that deserves more space and more time and more traction. And I think that's the issue we've got to kind of deal with. So interesting question. Next question, Stacey.
Next question. So, what other avenues are open for getting more traction for your content? So we're thinking specifically of shared and paid media here.
Yeah, so I think in terms of that, I was thinking of things around being your own publisher, and I guess using social media better. So that's bad language. The idea, I did that as a joke, by the way. But it's that whole thing around, I did a LinkedIn training session yesterday. And if you look at LinkedIn, you could just go to town on LinkedIn and go, I've got the newsletter, I've got this, I've used a featured post, I've done my profiles. And it's like using that social platform to the full effect that you can use it. So, and I think that's the thing that we don't use as an industry. We're kind of like relying on, we'll just post this once, it's done. So I think actually on those types of channels, how can I get more bang for my buck from wherever I am pushing this piece of content? How can I share this story in multiple ways? I could take that blog and make it into a video. I could do, and looking at the kind of, how do I really sweat the story in my own channels? And also potentially as well, looking at, using stuff like paid. So, you might add some, like LinkedIn thought leadership ads is a new thing where, really good posts from individuals you can just post, you can boost basically, and stuff like that, and it's relatively low cost, and you could target at development directors in London. You could just sit there and go, they all need to see this, and you can do smart stuff like that, and you can measure that. So I think there's those opportunities that we can definitely do. I think there's also a role for micro influencers, which I love. So that whole thing about, there are certain individuals who have communities and audiences who listen to what they say. Actually, we're probably quite lucky. People do listen to us for some weird reason. But it's like people that move the dial on concrete, on climate change, on sustainability, on all these range of topics. And actually you getting whatever your story is onto their radar and building a relationship with them, so they end up talking about you in some way, shape or form, could be a good way of you spreading your message and word and actually getting out to the right people. So I think stuff like that are new things we could be exploring. And also, I think things like collaborations with your audiences and tapping into them and getting them to do, like Stacey said, things like interviews and things like that, I think is a great way of kind of spreading the word and building on their own audiences as well. Okay.
Yeah, no, completely agree with all of that. And I would just add that I think there's great value in having people share your content and actually creating content that is shareable. I mean, are you creating shareable content? And this, there's a whole broad range of things that you can do to make content more shareable, from those like snappy little videos, social videos. And there are a few property companies that are creating some really great, like short, snappy social videos at the moment. Brilliant content, and it just does amazing, and it gets shared. It gets loads of views, loads of reactions. I think that's, if anything you're creating gets shared, it's a third-party endorsement. It's people spreading the word. It's getting you in front of a bigger audience. But I think it's important to think about, how you can make it shareable. Are you writing insightful pieces, interesting, useful pieces that people want to share? I mean, there was a big explosion of stuff yesterday on how LinkedIn had put as a default that all your content would be used to train its AI. And there was a massive backlash. And I saw 3 or 4 posts yesterday, and everybody was sharing all these posts to get the word out about this, particular bit. It was one small bit of information, how to turn it off in your settings if you want to do that. So, if you're producing something that is really good information, like you said, Io, that really good thought leader that, people want to talk about and want to share. The other thing I would say is, are you actively building a community around the content that you are sharing? A classic example of this is people posting stuff on LinkedIn. They get loads of comments and then just ignore them. That is a huge area that you can leverage. If people are commenting and talking about your content in that way, making comments, adding views, get in there and join the conversation. And it's great for visibility, because the more activity you have on your social content, the more reach it's going to get, because it's seen as being being as interesting. So I would say leverage those communities that that you're building through your content. Don't just post and ghost. And the cost of that is time. Responding to people's comments, and have a look at how people are responding to the comments. Or I've seen posts where I've commented and then other people have liked my comment, and other people have, not just the author, have replied to my comment, and you get a little bit of a conversation going, and that makes you the place to be, because you're talking about stuff that gets everybody talking and debating and having a discussion.
I also think on the community side, I think the other thing you can do if you're working with certain people on a project, there is nothing to stop you creating assets that they can then use. So you have your posts that you're using, but actually having like combined assets, social media things that people can use and share themselves. And so, for example, if I do a podcast interview and I produce all the clips, I share them with my guest. And I share all of that with them so that they can share it on their channels if they so wish. I don't expect it, but it's that you give them the assets and the tools so that they can do something if they so wish. So, if they wish to do so, and I think that's really important as well. And that's just planning at the start, thinking, what do I need to produce and share? So yeah, I think that's a planning bit of just thinking, how can I use this to best effect at the start?
So next question, which I think is you, Aya.
It is me. So final question is, are you using your own channels effectively? So that's own media, which is like things like video content, webinars, visuals and content and so on. Go on, Stacey.
Well, before I launch in, if anybody's got a question, just pop it in the comments, and we'll leave a little bit of time at the end and come to them if you have a question, or do carry on making points, because it's great to hear what you think about this topic. So owned media, are you using it effectively? I think there's 2 sort of key areas I want to talk about. One is embracing what you control, and one is repurposing. And we've touched upon this a bit in shared, sharing your content across a wider audience through social channels. Put my teeth back in. Your pure owned channels are your website. You have control over what you put on there. newsletters, podcasts, all of these things that you do yourself. And I think there's value in that it's your message delivered in your way. Yes, you can use social media, but you're controlling the message, but you're not controlling the distribution on social media. Whereas if it's on your website, it's on your, if it's your newsletter. I think newsletters are an area, some businesses do them really well, but other businesses, I think it gets overlooked. If you're building an email list of contacts, how often are you communicating? Are you pushing your thought leader out to your email list? How are you leveraging that? Because if people are subscribed to your newsletter, there's already an investment there in what you've got to say. And I think that's something that you can really leverage. The other thing I would say, and we've talked about this before, is repurposing. I think, I would say create less content, which I shouldn't say because I'm a content creator, but create less content, but create really good content and do more with it. Yeah. So, and this could be, I would include things like events, webinars, podcast series, white papers, do something, do it really well, but really make the most of it, splice it, dice it, reformat it. Then you can fill all your shared channels, your social media channels, and it helps get the message out to a bigger audience, and that helps position you as a thought leader, as a trusted source of information, which can then lead into earned media.
And I think just building on what you're saying as well, the extra bit is that then also, I think the thing is, it's like there's no channels are completely separate anymore. So also looking at your own content and saying, actually, can I add some paid behind this to give it more oomph, for example? And I think that's another area that we can be doing. And just looking to see if you can get more clients involved onto the channels that you own. So, a webinar with one of your customers talking about an issue that maybe you've helped them solve could be an interesting thing to do. And all of those types of things. So I just think it's just looking at your kind of owned channels and looking at how you can really, really, really get them to work for you. That's my key points. I think you kind of said what I was going to say.
Sorry.
I'm like,
I just wanted to hop back to events, because there is so much stuff you can get out of events, but I think the key with a good event is carefully curating it so that it becomes something that people talk about and want to, if you weren't there, you wanted to be there. And that can be by putting together a really good panel, not just a group of people that are all going to say the same thing, but put together, carefully curate a really good panel that's going to produce, have a really good conversation, really touch on the things that resonate people. And then from that, you can spin out, you can film it, you can do audio, you can do, But
I mean, even if you just use your mobile phone. But even if you just have your mobile phone and you just record it so that you can get a transcript from it, because that's simple and that doesn't cost you anything. And I think there are little things that don't have to cost you an absolute fortune that you can easily do, and then that's turned into a proper, a series of blogs or whatever. And I just think planning ahead to have all of those things together at the start. And actually, it's interesting. David Harron's come back with a comment that says, I guess all this takes this back to thinking about who your audience is and what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's so true, because if you do that, then you can sit there and go, actually, what content are they going to really resonate with? How can I get the most, how can I produce the most stuff out of this that they'll find valuable? And I think, David's comment is completely right. I'm going to just put it up a second. And
I think that comes back to the point about quality as well. And producing less, but make it very, very targeted and just do it really, really well. Because, if you've got to, if you do one or two really good pieces of content, you can spin that out, and reformatting it puts it into different types of, like if you turn audio into written, you're appealing to two different audiences. Some people like listening to things, some people like reading stuff. If you do a podcast and it's filmed, you've got video there, you've got audio there, you've got written content there. There's there's all of these things that you can do, and you're then channeling it into different audiences who have different, people like to consume content in different ways, but they all feed into each other. Coming back to your point, Io, they all feed into each other.
They really do. Does anyone else have any more questions for us? Let's have a quick look.
Anybody got any thoughts on what we've talked about? Anything that we've missed? I mean, this is a huge topic, and there's a lot more. There's a lot more you can cover. I mean, I fell down a complete rabbit hole when I was researching this.
It is, but it's one of those where you start looking at it, you're like, actually, there's a lot here, isn't there? And I mean, what I find quite fascinating is kind of like traditional publications still have that gravitas, don't they? Like with our stakeholders, like they do. And you're there going, but actually some of this newer stuff might work better for your actual business. And I think it's that weird kind of actually what works best for your audience and stuff. So it's a weird time. It's a really, really weird time. But the thing is, it's also quite nice holding a magazine. Do you enjoy it?
Yeah. Although every now and again I'll buy a magazine, and then I might read half an article, and then it just sits on my coffee table for...
That's fine. I love that.
Months. And we have a comment from Sean. I think that many of us are probably guilty of. Oh, it's gone. Hang on. Where's it gone? Yeah, there it is. Yeah, of putting in all this hard work to create high quality content, focusing on excellent distribution, but are we also giving ourselves the time to collect data, think about what data is useful, use data to help inform actions and assess what has worked? I completely agree. I mean, I like to think that I'm reasonably good at repurposing and promoting, but I know there's so much more that I could do. Even when we started our last B2B Comms live, we did a review of our lives, and we realized that we hadn't been collecting data, and we had to go back and then realize that a lot of the data LinkedIn only holds the data for 90 days or something, and then it disappears. And it seems really obvious once you've but if only we'd realized right at the start and actually been monitoring it all right from the start. So that's such a good point.
Yeah. We've got a comment from David.
So I saw something really interesting in the week talking about adding photo descriptions, and that embellishes what you said, Stacey. So users of LinkedIn who are converting to audio description, but more widely consume different ways, so that reformatting hits home. Yeah, I think it's think about all the different. It's not like it's just written word anymore. There are lots of people consume information in different ways, and there's really easy ways of converting stuff into different formats. Think about how you can get stuff read out, audio transcripts and stuff. So
but also photo descriptions really are more about the accessibility and inclusivity. So it's more about readers, isn't it, and stuff like that as well. It's not just, it's about, and also I think especially with the rise of video, it's worth having captions, even though I suppose say
yes,
because that's the thing, is that most of us sitting there watching it like when you're in bed like me, but like but it means that you might not have sound on. So I think that's the thing, is just actually adding captions and descriptions also helps with that as well, which is important, so that more people actually have it.
Definitely. Any final? How we go? We've got some more questions. Caroline, I think that's a good point. The pace of change in the real estate industry is slower. I think there are some people that are really leading the way in terms of what they produce and their approach to content across different channels. And Shirin, very good point. It's still a battle getting clients to share content on LinkedIn and engage with comments. Any advice? I think the only
training sessions from us.
I think if you've got, with anything like that, if you've got someone that is doing it and is doing it well, then I would promote them and highlight them as best, as best practice, and give them your attention. Because if you're, rewarding the good behavior, other people will see, they're doing some interesting, they're getting lots of engagement, the other thing.
There's one more thing I used to do when I used to work in house, was actually I would show their competitors talking to their clients.
Yeah. That's the other way, is if you've got a competitor that's doing it, that is creating those conversations and having those conversations, then
they kind of realize
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. We're nearly out of time. We've got 10 seconds left. 10 seconds left.
Final comment from Caroline. We also have a
hang
trust
on.
issue too. So some of us are cynical about social as a pure source of content for us and our clients. Trust is big.
Yeah, it is. But I think, you know, social is only part. There are so many other channels, you know, that you can use, and social can support those channels, but it doesn't have to be the be all and end all.
No, that's very, very true.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. Yes, that's us over and out. Thank you so much for watching and all your comments. It's brilliant. We love it when people comment and add their thoughts. It just makes it really worthwhile. If you're watching this and you're not following or connected to us, then do please connect, follow. We are friendly people on LinkedIn, and we'll be back on Friday the 18th of October. I haven't actually checked that date with you, Io, but I'm going to throw that out there. So
I assume it's fine. It might even already be in my diary. I've actually put everything in my diary for October, which is weird. Anyway, but yeah, so it should be fine. And we look forward to seeing you all then, and yeah, connect with us on LinkedIn. Have a good rest of the day. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.